I see a green light, which means we are going. Thanks for the thumbs up emojis, Lana. Thank you for that. Hello, all. Really excited to welcome you to the fourth quarter of the Career Exploration Camp presented by Body Armor. We have Don Ross on here from Body Armor. You all can attest. I've been saying that all week. Haven't missed it. It's been the script, locked and loaded, batted 1,000. But really excited to welcome you all today. We've got our esteemed panelists here, in addition to our moderator, Christian Murray, for our all-team meeting, which is why you're here today. If you're here and you're here for the fourth time in a row, you know that I also want to talk to you for a couple minutes and set some expectations for today. And I'm going to do that right now. But thank you again to everyone that's been spending time with us over the course of the last 2 weeks. And thank you for finishing strong with the fourth day of the Career Exploration Camp presented by Body Armor. I'm going to show my screen. And we're going to dive in. Christian, you can see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So sports, fourth quarter, everyone throws up the 4. So if you can, throw up the 4 in your household. Really excited to finish strong here today with an amazing presentation from this group. And obviously our Pathway Roundtables, and of course, finishing with our campus visits. So once again, you've been here with us. You know that we start by saying thanks to all the people that have supported us in helping bring this event to life. That's our sponsors, not the least of which is Body Armor, which is our presenting sponsor for the event. So thank you to all of these sponsors and our many donors. Their support, their generosity is why we're able to put on this program using such an amazing platform and being able to employ all the amazing people that we have to put on this event and do it fully funded for you all. So thank you again to everyone there. This is going to be our panel today. It's called Winning with Relationships. So you can see these amazing folks on the screen, and we're going to come back and hear from them in just a couple minutes, but we're going to do that from 12 p.m. to 1. Those individuals have represented all of these brands, and this is just some of them. So we've got a really amazing star-studded lineup of people with an assortment of experiences from throughout the sports industry. So you're going to hear a lot from them here shortly. Also, we've got Don here from Body Armor. As you start to think about different opportunities for you all in sports, you've probably heard of Body Armor as well for being a superior hydration product. Don's role is to work with these athletes that you see here, and my boy Baker Mayfield with the mustache there, in addition to some league-wide relationships with the UFC and the MLS. So this is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but Don's role is to help his brand, Body Armor, connect with consumers through relationships with these properties and these individuals. Along those lines, I'm thinking through, like, this is the last day of camp. I'm thinking through Body Armor's support and how much we appreciate. I'm also thinking through their most recent spot, which is called One More. So I wanted to play this with you all. Then I want to kind of put it in your wheelhouse and help understand from you guys to get a bit of a sports marketing case study as to what Body Armor was seeking to accomplish. We'll hear from Don what they were seeking to accomplish, and then we'll jump into our panel. So let's watch this quick spot. Very well done, by the way.
One more.
One more, please.
You guys need one more?
Hey, kid. Yeah, we'll take one more.
One more!
Uno más. Uno más.
One more.
One more, guys. One more. Set.
Let's go, one more, one more!
One more.
One more.
Oh, one more.
Hopefully everyone was able to see that. I got a text that maybe you weren't able to see. That's not good. So we'll move on then. Can you confirm, panelists, were you able to see that? No? All right. Well, consider that technical difficulty from senior leadership. So I apologize about that. That's what you get for trying to be spontaneous at the end. All right, so I do want to close it with a couple things. Since I screwed up on that, I got to finish strong. I can't quit now. Oh, come on. Okay. One more time, and we are good. So as a reminder, we've got 8 pathway roundtables. So you're all going to pick from these individual pathway roundtables for the session from 1 to 2. From there, you're going to be able to sit down with representatives from each of these 11 universities, all of whom provide sports management as a major. So it's a great way to learn more about how to navigate the college application process and obviously learn about specific institutions where you can keep that journey going. And then these are the table assignments for those university visits. You can just look for their logos once you're in the AirMeet lounge. So for everyone, participants, including panelists, our students have been competing throughout the entirety of the career exploration camp presented by Body Armor. And they're doing that by completing challenges associated with some content we've created in advance of the camp and what's happening at the camp. So a lot of people have been asking, what's the leaderboard looking like? This is the leaderboard as it stands today. You guys will have until through the weekend to continue to accrue points as well. And then this coming Tuesday, July 27th, we're going to have an award ceremony. So from 12 p.m. to 12:30, we will recognize the participants that competed the most, accrued the most points, and they'll be eligible for college scholarships and other prizes. Last but not least, this is the first step for you all at the Career Exploration Camp. So the next step is the Rising Pro Certification Program we've talked about, and that Sydney and Olivia discussed on Tuesday. More information about that will be forthcoming, including a registration form for those that are interested. So this is the first step of hopefully many steps towards your career in sports. Last but not least, as we shift gears and transition to the panel that's going to be moderated by Christian Murray, I wanted to share this quote from a leadership coach. The business of business is relationships, and the business of life is human connection. So without further ado, I'd like to stop sharing my screen, and we will welcome Christian to take over as moderator. Just important context. Christian's been working with sports biz camps for 2 years. Prior to that, he worked with us at Johnson Wales as a student of ours for 4 years. He is off the payroll and done and retiring from sports biz camps next week, hopefully getting a job in his new hometown of Phoenix. So Christian is a Hall of Famer, absolutely going to finish strong here with moderating an amazing panel. And hopefully he can provide some of his own perspective as well as he's winning with relationships as a college grad. So I'm going to stop talking and kick it over to you, Christian.
Appreciate that, Pat. I think the only thing I need is a ring and my jersey in the Raptors. But I think this is a perfect way to end the camp because this topic has been something like huge in my personal life because you are one of my biggest persons in my network. And I want to just start it off by saying like your network is your net worth. I want to, if y'all believe that, hit like a heart in the chat or something like that. But for the most part, like I'm so excited to have this conversation with 4 of the best people I also know in my network as well. So we will start it off, ladies first. Ashley, we'll just start it off with who you are, how you got there, and what did you think you wanted to do in high school?
Ashley may be frozen.
I'm sorry. My mic has really been acting up, but here I am. So I'm Ashley Turner. I'm the Director of External Affairs and Partnerships at the University of Central Florida for the DeVos Sport Business Management Program, longest title on the planet. It's a fancy way to say that I build relationships with partners locally here in Orlando and across the country and sometimes globally for our students to work on industry projects while they're gaining their master's. In high school, the only thing that I knew that I wanted to do was play sports in college. So I'll get into how I got into sports a little bit later in the panel, but that's all I knew that I wanted to do. So a lot to learn, and I'm excited that you guys are getting an opportunity to experience more than just being an athlete when it comes to participating in sports.
And speaking about being more than an athlete, you got Mika here. How'd you get your start?
Hi, everybody. My name is Mika Morris. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Tappet Technologies. And while that doesn't sound like it's in sports, we very much support the sports and entertainment business vertical. But I spent the majority of my career on the team sport and venue side. And when I was in high school, I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. At least that's what I thought. And so I went to college, much like Ashley, on a sports scholarship and spent my time in the journalism school studying broadcast journalism, and took a colossal turn from that to end up where I am today. But excited to tell you guys more about that as we have this panel discussion.
Perfect. And then Chip, and then we'll hop to Don.
So I'm Chip Bowers. I'm the president of Elevate Sports Ventures. At Elevate, we do three things. We work on data analytics on behalf of teams and leagues, both in the United States and globally. We handle sales, both ticket sales and what I would call marquee assets, so naming rights of arenas and stadiums, as well as jersey patch and global kit deals for soccer. And then we have a brand representation business that actually works with brands like a Lowe's or a Pepsi or any number of other brands that look to invest money into sports entertainment. I spent 24 years on the team side. I got an internship with the Olympic Committee, which is where I started getting into this space. Later worked for the Padres, what is now the Oklahoma City Thunder, formerly the Seattle Supersonics, the Golden State Warriors, Orlando Magic, Miami Marlins. So when I was in high school, I actually wanted to run a sports team. That was my number one goal. My father was a banker and my mother was a mortgage lending officer, and both of those things sounded terrible. I did not want to wear a suit. And I did not want to know anything about interest rates. I wanted to be in and around something that I loved and was passionate about, and sports was it. So I was very lucky to have an understanding pretty early in life about what I wanted to do and focused on that, and have been blessed enough to have it work out in my favor. So thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I don't know how I can follow all of that. I mean, it's some real heavy hitters. Everyone's in for a treat today. I'm Don Rouse. I am the partnership marketing manager over at Body Armor Sports Drink, and really my job over there is what Pat said, is to go out, find properties, teams, athlete partners, and what have you, to really market our brand and tell our brand story. The commercial just being one form of fashion, which we did that in. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a professional NBA player, and then I played AAU and got 45 points hung on me in a game by a guy that probably didn't even go Division I. And I realized I was not nearly as good as I thought I was, and that my dream of probably playing professional sports was not going to happen. And so I decided that maybe I could be a sports agent and maybe represent the guy who scored 45 points on me, and maybe make some money that way. And I was fortunate enough that I got into Johnson & Wales, got an internship with NASCAR, and learned about the sponsorship world. And since then, I've been in the sponsorship side of things. I've worked on the agency side, representing brands from Allstate with the BCS National Championship game or college football playoffs now. Worked with Anheuser-Busch on the global level for the World Cup, Olympics. And now with Body Armor, I've done everything from NASCAR to NBA to Major League Baseball. Pretty much every property at this point I've touched in some form of fashion. And so I'm excited to be here today to talk to you guys a little bit about winning relationships and how that's, is important in this industry and how it can help you moving forward.
No, I love that, because like that just put it in conceptualize it for everybody. Like, this is like $1 billion conversation. On this call alone, it's probably been over $1 billion generated in revenue, and primarily because this is like a relationship business. Like, when I was first getting into it, I heard everybody say, like, you got to network, and everybody in this conversation who's been through the campus probably heard similar things. Like, you have to network, you have to know people. So Don, just to, I guess, put it in perspective of how important relationships are in your career, like how important are they? And then how does Body Armor like to use those relationships to work with those larger brands and get things done on the sports side?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the relationship business first. And when you're on the partnership side of things, you saw a lot of athletes in that spot, but athletes are people. They're not just like commodities or assets that you just go and do a deal with and, you tell them what to do. They're people, they're humans. So in order for us to want to even strike a deal with an athlete, we have to have a good relationship and start to build a relationship. You can't just go in there and say, oh, because I want to give you some money, you're going to take this. That's not how it works, right? You have to build that relationship. And so as a partnership side of things, it's important for me to kind of play both sides. Like I have to have one ear to the voice of what the athletes and our league partners are trying to do and listening to that, but also understanding what we're trying to do as a brand. And so a lot of times I'm trying to find that middle ground or some compromises, and everything is not apples to apples or equal. Sometimes a partner is doing something a little bit more than what we're probably given, but we always try to make sure it nets out at the end of the day. But if we're not able to kind of just have genuine relationships and honest conversations with our partners, we don't get stuff done. It doesn't happen, or it becomes very, very hard to get stuff done and what have you. So when it comes down to relationships, that's the business that I'm in first. I just happen to be a relationship manager and generator in the sports industry.
I love that because you brought up an interesting point, like people, you're working with people. And one thing about people is everybody doesn't look like you. Everybody doesn't come from the same backgrounds as you, might be a different gender, might be a different race, whatever the case may be. So Chip, can you talk about like your experience at the Olympic Committee, how you were able to work with people who really don't look like you?
Yeah, I grew up probably like a lot of folks in this session, I grew up in a very small town in North Carolina, one high school, a lot of diversity in my high school. Everybody was a little bit different in terms of their interest in life. And so I learned really early on as I looked to make friends and be likable, that everybody has a different point of view on life and they come from a different background. Some are luckier than others, but at the end of the day, it's really important to have empathy and really ask good questions in a way that creates really good human connections. So I love that quote, Patrick, at the beginning of the presentation, because it means so much. And so a lot of people ask me, how do you actually build relationships with people that may not look like you or on the surface may not have a lot in common? But there are things that we all actually do day in and day out. We all eat, we all listen to music, we all probably watch movies or have some other degree of content, like, consumption. And so you just ask really meaningful questions like, what do you like to eat? Where do you go? What are you listening to right now? Have you heard, right? Did you see this great movie? And find those connection points where you find that point of interest that both parties can agree upon, that allows you to then open up, I think, what otherwise would be barriers to have more meaningful conversations about life and what you're dealing with, because everybody's got challenges, regardless of, how someone may look on paper to say, look, you've got a great job or you've got a great situation. Life is hard, right? So everybody can at least share and the understanding and appreciation that life can be difficult. So just really having a thoughtful approach to how you engage people, ask really meaningful questions, be humble, be like I said, likable. That to me is the number one thing in building relationships, is just be someone that other people want to talk to. And the best way to do that is just being a good person. And ultimately everything else will take care of itself.
I love that and that's the foundation of any good relationship. Any good success story is just being a good person. So Ashley, can you talk about like how important being a good person is to others, and as you're growing through your career, like how important it is to essentially be a good teammate, a good person to others, and that basically helps build your network as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I work with 20, 25 young people in my current role, and I'm always telling them, like, take a look to the left of you, take a look to the right of you. You might not like this person, or you might not have everything in common with this person. They're going to be your peers here shortly. And not that you're building relationships only to get to your next step or have a connection, but you really learn a lot from being a good teammate. I have an opportunity in every role that I've been in to meet new people, to learn from their life experiences. And when you jump in and say like, hey, we're setting up for an event, I'm going to help move these boxes, people might think of you the next time that they're thinking, oh, we have a project and Ashley was really helpful, or Ashley really had good insight. Relationships is what makes the world, and especially the sports industry, go around. I think when you're young, you think, okay, well, I don't need that person. I'm only going to focus on like building a network with Don, or I'm only going to focus on building a network with Chip or Mika or whatever. But at the end of the day, you're cross paths with people all of the time. I decided that I wanted to go in sports because my athletic director, who I happened to be part of his interview process when I was in college because I was the president of Student Athlete Advisory. He's the one who said, you're going to go to graduate school because the market's crashing, nobody's hiring broadcasters. I had never heard of the DeVos program. I had never heard of Bill Sutton. And Ward Manuel is now the athletic director at the University of Michigan. I could have said, like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm 21. I know what I'm doing. But instead, I built that relationship, and him being a good leader helped me to be a good teammate on his staff and then moving forward. So I just think you never know whose path you're going to cross and what you can learn from them, whether that's through work or just through life experiences that makes you better. I believe that iron sharpens iron, and being a good teammate sharpens you for sure.
Just to add to that, you just don't know how someone that you cross paths with is going to impact you later. Just yesterday, I got a message from a guy that I was trying to pitch some business to me, and it didn't really make sense for us. And, but you treat everyone with respect and grace and courtesy, whether or not there's a business relationship to be had or not. And he reached out to me and said, hey, someone called me about you and wanted me to give them an opinion about you. Had I not treated that person, despite the fact that there was no business opportunity, with the right respect, courtesy, and grace, who knows what he would have said about me to somebody else, because he has no obligation to be anything but honest. And what he was able to share was really positive feedback. And I had no idea that that would have happened months and months down the road. So just be thoughtful about how you treat people, because you just never know when those same relationships are going to impact you later.
Absolutely. I'm gonna hop back to you on this question as well, but like you just spoke about like just leaving a lasting impact. And for young people as myself, we aspire to be you guys. We aspire to like have a relationship with you guys, have a mentorship with you guys. So what does that take? Like, what does it take for us, other than being good people, like Chip mentioned earlier, like what does it take for us to build a relationship with you? And like, what can we provide for you to essentially be of value to you and your network?
Look, I think for me, the young people that I sort of find myself leaning into or wanting to support, it's really a two-way street in a lot of ways. But, it always starts with them initiating the outreach, them, doing the small things, catching up, letting me know what's happening in their world, what's happening in their life, asking specifically for ways that I might be able to support them in things that they need to be done or get done. So for me, it's that proactivity to me, but then it's also me proactively looking back at them and saying, hey, there's a connection point here. I care about this person's career success and future, and I want to invest in them. But, relationships are two-way. It cannot be one party leaning into the other. They both have to be leaning into each other. And so I think it's the small things. It's being proactive. It's being thoughtful. It's connecting, on LinkedIn and some of the other ways that we can now that we couldn't do when I was coming up in this business. And then just looking for that connection point with somebody. As Chip mentioned, just because he and I don't look the same doesn't mean there isn't some common space that we can connect with each other, and finding that within the people, not only that you're looking up to, but the people sitting beside you, because they will be as impactful to your career as those people that you look up to.
And Chip, can you like elaborate on her last point? That's a perfect segue. Like networking across, like a lot of times we see like a role, we see a title. Like I look at y'all's role in titles every day. Like I be like, how do I even know these people? How can I connect with these people? It's so humbling to even like be in the presence of you all. But like you said, we're all just people. So how important is like just networking across or looking at your peer and asking them, bouncing off ideas, and how does that help you grow through your career as well?
Yeah, Christian, in full honesty, I didn't have an appreciation for that when I got into this business. I looked at the people sitting next to me as just someone else who worked in the team, right? They were just like me. Or in some cases, if your competitive spirit takes over, you're like, well, I got to do better than that person, right? I want to be able to advance in the company, and they want to do the same thing. So how close do I really want to get to them? And it didn't take long, but I think what you realize is that everybody's in that together, right? And so just like any good team environment, you have to lean on each other for the, purpose of the greater good. And so you actually support and show a great deal of, care and interest in the success of others. I mean, I told you this once before, Christian. My first real job in sports was with the San Diego Padres. I'm really going to date myself, so Ashley, don't laugh. This was in 1996. So I don't think anyone on this call was even relatively close to being born by 1996, right? So in 1996, I get a start, and there's all these guys who are in this organization with me who are just interns or frontline salespeople. Well, those individuals, the guy who hired me ended up becoming the CEO of the Miami Dolphins and the San Diego Padres, and now runs Intercom Sports Radio. A guy that was hired 3 months after me, Sam Kennedy, is now the CEO of the Boston Red Sox and Fenway Sports Group. Theo Epstein, who now works for Major League Baseball, was actually the president of baseball operations for the Red Sox and the Cubs, was an intern with me in this organization. Eric Judson runs JMI Sports. It runs college multimedia rights agreements for Clemson and Kentucky, just to name a couple, worked with us in this organization. So these guys were all my age, right? And we didn't really know what we were getting into. But now, as you go from 22 to, God forbid, 48, over that 26-year span, we all grew up in the industry together. So those guys that I looked at as just another dude or another lady in my organization are now running organizations at a high level, teams, leagues, agencies. I can say that about every stop in my career. I've had the luxury of working with people who are now doing great things. And because of that, because of, I hope the relationship I built with each and every one of them, now in my current capacity, I can reach out to them and have a real, honest, meaningful conversation about how we can help each other continue to grow our business on behalf of the companies we represent, because we have a real rapport that started at such an early age. And even today, I make relationships today that I know will not just be beneficial, I hope, mutually beneficial tomorrow, but just as importantly in 12 years, right? If I'm still doing this at 60, then I'm going to be able to look around and say, I remember 12 years ago, we had this relationship that we got started, and now look at how far we've come, right? I think you have to always be in an evolutionary state. You got to always want to get better. You got to strive to do more. You have to test yourself. You never reach the end of your learning curve. And so I think the more you can subject yourself to meeting people that are, even people that work for me, I learn from every day. And if you don't have that perspective, like I've got people that have worked for me in my career who are some of my closest friends in the industry who are now doing things that are my peer, that I hired, who have now grown to do things that are now my peer in the industry at a C-level role at some other team. So that to me is exciting. And it starts literally today. For those of you on this call, it starts with the people you know in high school. I literally, which Patrick knows, have hired someone to work with me at Elevate who I met in college 28 years ago, right? So that goes to show you, we've been friends this long, and now she's a colleague and we're doing fun stuff together. So always make sure you got your eyes and ear open to build those relationships whenever and however possible.
And I feel like this is a great first step. Like, everybody's come here on a common goal to learn, to network, to essentially like learn something that you really didn't go about. And I've noticed too that this is very uncomfortable too. That's when you build the best friends, is when you're both uncomfortable. And I made some friends at like networking events because I hate networking events, and just going up and talking to people is sometimes weird to me. So whether it was in this setting, it would be kind of cool and kind of fun, because you're going through round tables, you're going meeting some of the top executives in the NBA, NFL. Like, that's a cool experience. And I want you guys all to realize, like, it starts anywhere. It starts whether you're in a class with somebody or in a setting like this. This is a perfect opportunity to build those relationships across. But Don, going back to you, like, Chip just mentioned earlier about like building those relationships. But how do you build the relationships in regards to like making money? So using those relationships to essentially push the brand forward and build revenue and build growth for both companies on each side.
Yeah, 100%. And before I answer that question, one thing when Chip was talking, and I've always lived this, is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Like if you run a marathon, it doesn't matter how fast you run the first mile or the second mile. The goal is really to get to the end, which is 28.2 miles or whatever. So like, it doesn't matter how you start, it's just a matter how you finish, right? So keep that in mind for all you guys. But as far as like how you monetize relationships, it's a great question. Like from a brand standpoint, it's a lot of different ways. It starts with understanding commonality amongst amongst the relationships that you have. Like Chip talked a little bit about it. All of us like music and what have you. A lot of conversations start over dinner, over golf, over breakfast, or over networking event. And they really start with solving problems, right? Like when we signed on the Major League Soccer, true example, we were no longer going to be part of the NCAA March Madness. March Madness is probably one of the premier partnerships that you can have in the sports space. And so they came and said, Don, we got to replace March Madness. Go figure it out. Right? That's the problem. Started calling friends in the industry that I knew, like what's available. Started doing some homework, like people who worked at agencies. Hey, there's a brand over here that is called Avocare, and their deal with Major League Soccer is coming to an end. A good friend of mine, Jose DeVerge, was working at Major League Soccer at the time, or had just left Major League Soccer, and kind of like made me aware of that. We started having some conversations, who the players over at Major League Soccer that we should connect into. And then it started with a conversation in the meeting. Like we literally met them for lunch in the city in New York, and just kind of talked about what they were looking to do. Were they happy with their current partner? What did they see their brand growing over the next 3 to 5 years, and where we were going to go over the next 3 to 5 years? And it would just kind of ended up being this natural synergy. And as a result of it, we end up doing a deal. We end up getting a deal done in like 30 days. And as Chip is somebody that's broker deals, and as Mika and Ashley and people negotiating deals all the time, usually you don't broker multi-million-dollar partnerships in 30-day time unless there's great relationships involved, right? And so that's what really happened. It was commonality. And now as we talk about it today, so that was just getting the deal done. When we talk about activating the deal, we now have to go and build relationships. I have 20 different MLS teams. There's 20 different presidents of those clubs, 20 different partnerships people, 20 different media companies, media divisions, ticketing departments. I'm building relationships every day, learning about their business and taking a genuine interest in how they perform on the field, but also how they, how they run their organization. And it's that kind of stuff that ultimately helps us go a long way. We're by far no one's biggest partner. Like I can tell you that from a dollar perspective, we're never anyone's biggest partner. But the Body Armor mentality is always, we won't be your biggest, but we'll be your best. And sometimes that's going both ways, of just sending product to somebody for their kid's birthday party, because we know you're going to have a bunch of kids there, and the last thing you want to do is be buying a ton of bottled waters. Don't worry about it. I got you covered. Those are small things that go a long way. So when I ask somebody else on the back end, hey, I need this athlete to do X, Y, and Z, no problem. Let me see what I can do. It may be a heavy lift, but let me ask. But it goes two ways, as what Chip was saying. And so that's one way of how we look to monetize it, is really being genuine, authentic, and being honest.
Yeah, Don, I love that. The other thing, this great example recently, we had a retreat in Charlotte with our staff coming out of the pandemic. We had not seen each other in a long time. And being relatively new to the company, I didn't know 52 of the 63 people at the retreat that reported to me. Now, I'd interacted with them online, but never in person. And so there was a lot of angst around, young people in our organization who came to talk to us and said, who is this guy? He looks kind of old. Like, do we have anything in common? And there was a young lady that I started talking to about music. And I said, what do you listen to? She goes, I don't know if we listen to the same thing. I was like, okay, do you listen to J Balvin, Doja Cat, Masked Wolf? Like, are you into heavy metal? You like Metallica? You like classic rock? Because I'm a huge music fan. And she started laughing and she goes, well, I actually like country music. And I was like, okay, well, so these are my favorite country artists. So just doing something so simple, right? And being well-rounded, which is the advice I'd give to everybody on this call. There are things at your age you go, and I tell my 12-year-old this, who's going to be 13 in a couple of weeks. She's like, I don't like that. I go, that's not the point. Give it a chance. You don't have to like it, but you should be exposed to it to decide ultimately if you like it or not. Don't just discount it. So listen to music that you typically wouldn't listen to. You might be surprised. Watch movies that you otherwise might not watch. Like I've been watching horror movies with my 12-year-old. Don't like them. But I actually had a conversation last night at a dinner with people from Sports Business Journal, and one of the individuals loves horror movies, right? So we had this horror movie conversation. So I wouldn't have known that if I didn't start watching Fear Street on Netflix for whatever reason. So, I think that's the stuff when you're a young person, you're in high school. I was like, I like this and maybe that. You should try to have an appreciation for all this, right? That's kind of the goal. Have an appreciation for life, I think, is a really good way of understanding how to approach networking.
And if you don't mind, if I can add in, and I'll promise you I'll shut up. One thing I do think you guys have an opportunity to really add as young students is that you're coming from a different generation. So things continue to evolve as technology evolves, media trends evolve, the way we look at sports and sponsorships. Generation of Zers are actually the biggest cohort of consumers that are really going to shift what we're doing from a culture standpoint. We've seen it before happen with the millennial generation. Now, there's a bunch of people like myself that don't know everything that's happening with Generation Z, right? Where are you guys consuming your sports? These are insights and things that you can even share an occasion with other people when you're having conversation. Me, I'll sit here and watch an entire NBA game, but I'm pretty sure Christian's not watching the entire NBA game. He's probably catching the 10-minute highlights on YouTube, hitting it on Instagram, maybe even on TikTok. But those are consumer differences that really matter. So if I'm advertising as a marketer and I'm spending money on TV, I may be reaching my age group, but then I also need to be spending money on YouTube, and I may need to be spending money on TikTok, or I may need to be doing stuff with a Chris Brickley that, Christian may be looking at. But these are things that you guys bring to the table too, especially as you go to organizations about, hey, well, a lot of people I know do things this way. You may share that insight and do it respectfully. That's someone like Mika and Chip who are like, oh, I've been in this game a lot. I've seen a lot of changes, and Ashley has seen a lot of changes. Here's how we can maybe adapt that one little piece of insight that you gave that may be even something that we can monetize or actually help shape shift the culture in which
Know your worth. So I feel like this is a perfect segue to some questions from the chat. Ashley, John just spoke about like using monetizing relationships, meeting so many different people. And sometimes that comes with imposter syndrome. And you work with young people who often go through this too. So can you provide perspective to like how do you deal with that?
Sure. I don't think there was a term for feeling like you don't belong in the room when we were coming up. I don't know, Mika, Chip, Don, correct me if I'm wrong. You didn't feel like you belonged. You didn't share it with anybody. You kind of just were like, I'm going to sit here at the table and kind of be quiet and hope that I don't put my foot in my mouth. And but yeah, I've experienced imposter syndrome. I'm often coming up in my career, I was the youngest person in the room most often. I remember my first big job, I was 25, and everybody on my team was at least 5 years older than me. So everyone reporting to me was older than me. And I felt like, what do I have to offer? What do I bring? Again, that comes back, overcoming that comes back to relationships. I had read this book when I was in grad school called The Power of Who by Bob Bodine. It talks about having a personal board of directors. And I know that book is probably dated and cliche now, but I don't do anything without running it by the people in my life who can sew into me, tell me the truth, even if it hurts my feelings. I might walk away and come back and be like, okay, you were right. That hurt my feelings, but let's talk about how I could have been better there. So when you have imposter syndrome or you're feeling like maybe this job is too big for me, one, I think it's really important to write down what you are good at and how it fits into the room or the situation that you're in. And then have people in your life who can tell you the truth, like this job is really big for you and maybe you need to work on these 5 things, or this job isn't too big for you and here's why, who can remind you your worth and your quality and what you bring to the table. Because like Don and Chip and Mika have all shared, we always have something to bring to the table, even if you feel like I'm too young or I'm the only woman, or I'm the only Black person, or I'm the only whatever. You have a unique perspective from your life experience to bring to the table. So there's probably no place that you don't belong, even if you don't feel like you belong. So get some people in your life who can really speak into that and remind you of like what you do have to offer and what you can bring to the table.
I'm going to add a little bit to that. And funny enough, as a side note, Bob Bodine lives 3 blocks away, which is wild. I didn't know that. And he still has tons of networking events in the Dallas area. But interesting enough, it was just a quick point. But I do want to say, if you are doing anything that is stretching you as a executive, as a young person, as a job, you're going to feel a bit of imposter syndrome. And so in my experience, if you don't feel a little bit of that, you're not doing something that's stretching you and growing you in the ways that it needs that you need, frankly. I think all of us, as you step into new roles, there's a little bit of, holy smokes, like this is probably a bit bigger than where I'm at. But if you don't have that, you don't grow. And so I would encourage you guys, when you feel that, know that you're right where you need to be and do exactly what Ashley said. Get with your board of directors for yourself and get the support you need and get the coaching you need to get better. But if you're constantly in jobs where you feel equipped to do the entire breadth of the job, I would say that you're not really pushing yourself and challenging yourself and stretching and stepping outside of the lines a little bit, as Chip sort of alluded to. You got to do some stuff that feels out of your box to be able to grow to get to where you want to be.
Because that's well stated. I have imposter syndrome every day of my life. Honestly, I mean, and it's for all the reasons you just stated, right? I still go back, and this is an internal fire, right? This is not an external projection of how I feel. This is something that drives me daily. I'm a small town kid that a lot of people didn't leave my town, and most people didn't think I would either. And when I did it, most people were waiting for the day I came home, right? So that feels me like I'm always going to get questioned. Are you the guy? Like, you didn't go to a big school, Ivy League school, or you're not from a big market, or whatever. You're not going to pay. You're not going to be as successful as you thought you would be. That fuels me every day. And I've always taken chances to keep that fire burning inside of me, because I still question myself, like, are you doing enough? And like Draymond Green, when I was at the Golden State Warriors, we used to joke. Draymond would literally make stuff up that he said people said to him just so he could get fired up for the next game, right? When you're playing a Tuesday night game number 57 of the season, and you're in the middle of the year, and you're playing the Utah Jazz, and you're like, how am I going to get up for this game? You make up something that someone said to you at the free throw line just so that you can tell everybody in the locker room that this happened, so you can get more fired up to bring your best the next day. So every day I tell myself, someone doesn't think you're as good as you want to be. So how are you going to manage that, right? And then you go do your best, right? You put your best foot forward.
I relate to that so much, Chip, as someone from a small town as well. I remember I grew up in North Carolina, a place called Goldsboro, and I remember going to Charlotte. I was like, oh, I'm in a big city. And I was like terrified. It was like 4 hours away from home. Fast forward, graduate 10 years later, I'm moving to New York City, right? Like, and definitely didn't feel like I belonged. I remember leaving the agency I was with, and the executive director was like, "Oh, you're going to the big leagues now. You sure you're ready for this? I don't know. There's always a place here if you need it." And similar to Draymond, I was like, "There's no way in hell I'm coming back." Just out of pure motivation, like the internal fire, right? I was like, "I'm going to make this work in some form or fashion," right? And when you look at just in general, like our industry, there's so many people. There's like, you're talking to a bunch of business athletes like that's on this panel, that people who find the fuel to kind of push themselves out their comfort zone. You use the Draymond reference. I talk about with in the sports piece, like when my nephew played basketball, if you're not working on your game and adding something to your game every single year, you are behind. And you're not only behind 1 year, you're probably behind 2 to 3 years, because somebody else may be adding 2 to 3 things to their game. And when I would say game, I'm not just talking about the sport. I'm really talking about, like, what am I adding over here? Okay, you know what? I don't know anything about venture capitalism, but it's permeating all over the sports industry right now. Time to read up, like time to expand my network, find out who are other people that may know a little bit about what venture capitalism is. I mean, it is all over the industry right now. VC firms investing in technology, teams, whatever. How does that happen? How does the conversation start? Did it just pop out of nowhere when FSO posted it on in their newsletter, or were these conversations that were happening a year, 2 years, 3 years out, right? And how does the conversation start? What was the problem they were solving? These are all things that's going through my mind about one thing in the industry. NFTs, new space that's happening right now. Is it here to stay? Is it not? We don't know. I remember when social media came around, people thought it was a fad. Like, oh, don't know if this is going to be around. We had Vine, and there was a lot of places that got cut out. But social media is tremendous to the sports industry right now. If we didn't take the time to learn it, like you're on the outside looking in. And so, when you talk about that internal fire and that imposter syndrome, if you don't have it, if you don't feel it, to your point, Ashley and Mika and Chip, you're not doing something right. And so it's very important to kind of understand that's what it is, and then use that as fuel and motivation to go seek out what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
That was really good. That was really good. I love the business athletes, and if we had them at the Hall of Fame, y'all would definitely be in it. But we bringing up Olivia to the stage. She asked, Mika, I want you to answer this. How do you keep in touch respectfully with pros who are so busy? What are your preferred platforms? And how do you prefer that whenever someone meets you at the student's camp or whatever the case may be, how do you prefer that they keep in touch with you?
You know, we're all busy, and you can get overwhelmed by the sort of mediums that flow into you on a daily basis. But for me, preferably, I think LinkedIn is a great tool. I'm pretty active there, and I don't think there's a person that's reached out to me on LinkedIn that I haven't responded to in some way. And I think it's a great way to see what's happening, with professionals in our industry and others for that matter. And then I think it's always smart to sort of follow up or offer commentary to things as they're happening. If I post something that happened in my business, a way to get my attention is to respond to it and say, hey, I saw this post. You guys just did a massive deal with the San Diego Padres. Help me understand more about that, or how did that come about? I mean, those are things that feed into what's happening in my world and are relevant. And then you usually will get some sort of response. I think if email is like the black hole of disaster, I mean, just keeping up with that in general from a work perspective on top of other things is a lot. But yeah, I think, social media is great. LinkedIn's great. But just note that it's got to be a relevant connection, right? Just sending a note saying, hey, I want to connect with you because you sit in a chair that I hope to be in one day, it isn't enough, right? Like, demonstrate that you know something about me, know something about my business, know something about my journey, and that we've found a connection point there. Hey, you know what? I'm from Boston too. I ran track and field too. I used to live in Charlotte too. I love the Raiders. You used to work at the Raiders. Help me understand that. Like, I mean, there's got to be some connection point to sort of entice that counter connection for me. And I can only obviously speak for me, but I'm not sure how Chip and Ashley and Don like to be sort of connected with, but that works for me.
I would just add that, like, it's super easy nowadays to have and find a connection point. It's not like the old days when Chip was coming up, not the rest of us, just Chip, had to like read the paper and like listen to the radio and like all these things. Like, you can set up Google alerts on people, on organizations that will send you an email that like, Mika took a new job, or Chip got a new partnership, or Don's got a new partnership with the MLS. Like, those things will come to you, and sometimes reaching out is not always with an ask. Sometimes it's just reaching out to say, I saw this new partnership, Mika. It looks incredible. Congratulations. Like, and not needing anything. That goes a really long way for busy professionals. So I think all the platforms that Mika mentioned are important. Email is the black hole. Like, in the hour that we're on this call, I'm worried about what my email is doing on this screen over here. But if you send me a message on LinkedIn with intention, with commonality, I will definitely find a way to get back to you. Social media, again, is a great tool as well. But I think it's important that you use the tools that you have. Like I said, Google Alerts is an easy way to stay connected with the people and the organizations that you want to be connected with, and then reach out with some intentionality on what that is. Chip, that was just a joke.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Patrick to mute your mic and ask Christian not to ask you another question. But aside from that, usually when I communicate, it's through Morse code or carrier pigeon. No kidding. I think to that point, I like to place phone calls in full honesty. I mean, I think texting is great. Email's terrible. LinkedIn is great. Mika's right. All of those are great. I think, to me, the time of picking up the phone and calling someone to congratulate them, even if you get their voicemail, or to say, I'm sorry. Like, friends of mine with the Phoenix Suns just lost a tough NBA Finals to a very good Milwaukee Bucks team. I called them and said, been there. It's hard. I'm sure today's quiet in the office. I'm not expecting you to call me back. I just want to let you know I'm thinking of you, and congratulations on a great year. The business is getting a lot of momentum thanks to the hard work you guys are putting in. Keep after it. Like, that goes a long way with people, right? Writing a note Actually handwriting a note and sending it to someone takes 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be like a 3-page letter. It can easily be thinking about you, hope you and the kids are well, let's get together soon, Chip, right? And then call them in a few days or a week to say, hey, let's get together, right? I think just hearing someone's voice, the inflection in someone's voice, their enthusiasm that they're sharing or that you're sharing with them goes a long way. I tell people all the time, especially in sales capacities, you can hear someone's happiness and or sadness through the phone. So how you talk to someone on the phone goes a long way in terms of their engagement, how you should react or respond to that with equal amount of energy, or if they have down energy, how do you bring them up, vice versa. I just love the interpersonal connection, and I don't see enough young people today understanding the value of that because it's so easy to do it digitally, which I get because I do it too. I will literally be on an airplane and send 50 text messages so that when I land, they go, they take off because I don't have time, right? And it could be, hey, happy birthday, thinking about you. Let's get together soon. How did Susie do in her game? Whatever that is, people are like, hey, great to hear from you. But I think the most important thing is here, stay connected. Don't disappear.
Yeah, 1000%. I think the pandemic has kind of, if you, all of us experience, everyone across on this earth has experienced it, the inability to connect with people. And so I think coming out of it, my wife and I, we talk about it all the time, is like, let's not revert back to those people who can occasionally, we're supposed to hang out with friends, but something came up work-wise tonight, so I may have to flake on this because I'm prioritizing this, right? We just went through a significant experience where we all realize human connection is really important. So, and the reason I bring that up is that Chip mentioned, it's really easy to do the digital thing because it's easy and it makes a lot of sense. Balance is what it comes down to. Now, you're not going to call everybody. That's just not how it's going to work. Some people you're going to have more of a digital relationship with, but as the relationship grows and it expands, there's nothing wrong with like, oh, I do have this person's cell phone number, and like, I get texts sometimes from students that will hit me and like, yo, I know you're a huge NBA fan. Like, what do you think of the 50-piece challenge just had the other night? And we engage in a whole conversation just about the NBA finals on text, right? But that's their way of just staying in touch, right? Because we built the relationship. At some point, I gave them my personal number and we stayed in touch. And I asked them, how's it going? When you getting ready to graduate? How you feeling? And we exchange a couple pleasantries, and that's great. But those are maybe individuals when they get ready to graduate in a couple of years, they may be looking for internships and like, hey Don, is there something you got at Body Armor? If I don't have something, I'm sure I'm gonna put in touch with somebody. Pat has seen that with a couple of Johnson & Wales students that I put in touch with other organizations. So yeah, the staying in touch via LinkedIn is great. You have so much at your disposal. It's just all about being authentic and reading the relationship.
And I wanted to bring Muyi up because he there's a specific kind of question built around that too. Like, it's this two-way street. Like, what value do you as the prospective mentee have to provide? And I think Muyi, that question was kind of answered while you asked that question. But one thing I want to articulate before we get to one final question and start to close out is like Ashley, Mika, Don, and Chip, Muyi, like, they're not asking, they don't care. They're not asking for anything of you. Like, they're not expecting anything of you. Like, that's not why they're giving you their time. They just want to help you. So at a minimum, let people know how they're helping you. I think that would be my piece of advice. That fills up Chip, that fills up Don, that fills up Mika, that fills up Ashley. They're dealing with stuff all day that they don't like doing, right? And they're busy right now, but they took time out of their day to talk to you all, and just letting them know how they've helped you or how you've grown as a result of that connection is all they really want.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to take this on to the future as well.
Right on cue. Well done. So just put that in a thank you note, send it to Chip Bauer's house, and now you're in, man.
Well, I think that the key to that whole spiel was like, you just gotta be intentional. You gotta think outside the box. The biggest thing that's helped me is like you said, like Chip calling people. Like a lot of my peers would be like, this man will call anybody. I would really call anybody because like when you develop those relationships and really like just try to understand the person behind the title or behind like what they do outside of work, like you're able to build like really authentic relationships. And like that's something that's helped me. Like Chip and me could just put their name on the line for a job or interviewing with the Suns. And I don't know if I'm supposed to disclaim that, but even if I get the job or not, just the fact that they like took the effort and time based off the relationship I built with them, it just speaks like wonders to like what you can do, and like if you surround yourself with people who you aspire to be like and you aspire to like have success of, the possibilities are endless.
We're getting ready to close up shop here, and I wanted to bring up Peyton, who had a question related to like steps that you guys took in high school. But at kind of as closing, like this is your final shot. You know, what steps, if you were in high school today, if you attended this camp, like what are some specific steps that you would take towards a career in sports?
I'll jump in and start. I think the biggest thing is like take the steps. I think oftentimes we think, oh, this is to Chip's point earlier, this is exactly what I want to do. And so like, I can't deviate off of that. But like, I figured out what I wanted to do, and I'm still figuring out what I wanted to do because I tried things. So I thought I wanted to be like Mika, a broadcaster. And I took an internship, and it was horrific. You had to be at the station at 3 a.m. in Buffalo, 5 feet of snow. And I learned quickly, like, I don't care to give the sports in the morning. I want to watch the highlights. I don't care to like cut the video. Like this is no fun. But I got that opportunity because I just took the step. So I think I would build a relationship with your athletic directors, your coaches, the social studies teacher that you think is super boring. You don't know who she or he knows or what they can give you. So just take the step in engaging and learning what you do and don't like, because it'll go a long way as you're chipping away at figuring out what you want to do when you grow up. Because I think everyone on this call is still to the point of challenging themselves, figuring out what they want to do when they grow up. So just whatever it is, just take a leap and actually take the steps versus saying, this is the only thing I want to do and I'm only going to focus on this. Try different things, take different classes if you have an opportunity to do that. Volunteer at your local, if you're lucky enough to live in a city big enough that has sports teams, volunteer, sit down for informational interviews. Chip and I think all of us grew up in small towns, but like there was a college in my hometown that I never visited to because I was like too good to like decide. And now I'm like, the guy who's interviewing for the athletic director is a friend. And I'm like, oh, that was stupid. I should have done that. But I was too like focused on the one thing. So I would just say, try a bunch of things to help you narrow down what you want to do.
And to add to that, because Ash has touched on it, you know, we all have a unique position in this world that allows us to get a leg up in whatever it is we want to do. And a lot of times what people don't do is they don't look around their sort of core network to be able to start to lean in, right? So as she mentioned, you know, I grew up in a small town in Boston, and, you know, did I look at, you know, maybe relationships that my neighbor had, or maybe opportunities to volunteer locally, or other things that I could have done to sort of start to learn and cut my teeth on? I know I want to be in sports, but what does that mean? I think I want to be in marketing. Well, what does marketing in sports really mean? And how can I learn as much of that through what I've got at my disposal to get me in a position to then step into what I ultimately want to do when the time is right? And so you have an opportunity to really squeeze out every opportunity around you if you are focused on and looking for those chances. And I think a lot of times we look at it with tunnel vision, and I have missed opportunities to sort of lean into people, things, situations, volunteering, learning, that you can't go back and redo. And so I would just say that the inches are around you, and the small things that you can do to sort of expose those opportunities are going to pay dividends, considerable dividends later.
Yeah, I'll let Don wrap up. I will say quickly, start, and this will be like an evolutionary process for the rest of your life, but start identifying your passions in life outside of sports, and then start thinking about how those passions apply to the sports industry. The fastest way not to get a job in sports is just say, I want to work in sports. You have to know where, to Mika's point, you want to be, and where can you bring value to that organization. And so if you like digital design, you can work in the marketing department of a team or a league or an event. If you like finance, you can work in the finance department of a team or a league. You name it. If you're passionate about it, it applies to sports within reason, right? So if you're passionate about doing nothing, you will not get a job in sports. But I don't think a real passion around Call of Duty, albeit esports, would actually benefit you. But I think that's the point. Start identifying the things that you like and are attracted to in life, and then think about how they apply to sports.
1000%. And to kind of add to that, what Mika and Ashley was saying too about looking around your environment, the networking opportunities that are around. You know, I started working as a camp counselor and doing recreational stuff for the Parks and Recs team as a high school student because I just needed some money for the summer. Guess what? There's a Parks and Recs department that puts on the basketball leagues, the soccer leagues, the baseball leagues, the softball leagues. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know this happened. Went and had a conversation with that person, right? When I go to college, I got a job on campus running intramural sports because I had a little bit of insights into park and recs and things of that nature, right? Every city that is in the United States has a park and recs department. And so that's one place that you can even just start to kind of like Google and go talk to people. They may not, quote unquote, work in sports because they're not with a league or what have you, but they're facilitating and they're doing something that all sports leagues and organizations do. They're connecting with people. They're providing a service or resource to the community that is for recreational and for fun. And that's an opportunity for you guys to get in. They're always looking for volunteers. And then the other thing I would kind of say too, you know, for you, use the internet to your advantage. I mean, it is so much information out there, like to be used. A lot of times we use the internet for entertainment and that's fun and all, but there's so much information. There's books to be read. There are networking opportunities. There's virtual networking opportunities like this. And so you guys have all kind of demonstrated you're willing to take the first step, but it's a marathon. So there's more steps to be taken. There's more miles to be ran, but use the tools that you have at your resource because they're plentiful.
Christian, what a panel. Unreal.
I told you this was $1 billion conversation.
Christian, amazing job as moderator, amazing tenure with SBC. We're so proud of you and so thankful. This is a really great way to go out. So great job on the moderator. Panelists, awesome, funny. Ashley with some quips. Chip learning how to take a joke. I was very impressed by that. I'm glad I had my mute on because I made a loud laugh noise. But honestly, guys, you are your generosity. It speaks volumes about your individual character, and I think ultimately it inspires our students not only to have their own goals and dreams, but ultimately be in the position where they can give back in the way that you did. So thank you so much for that. And I think there was kind of, just to close in on the themes, we've created the platform. This event is the platform. We're giving you all the guidance to help you understand the steps that you could take. But as just touched on, you got to take the steps, right? And the hardest step to take is the first step. You're here today. Boom. First step done. Now you're in motion. I don't remember physics class, but now you're in motion. It's easier to keep going once you've started. Stay with us. Stay connected. We want to support you. We're going to have ongoing programs, but keep moving, right? And back to Chip's last point. Right after this, we've got these pathway roundtables. There's 8 different careers. Like, explore. Even if you don't think you are liking math, maybe you want to get into stats analytics opportunities. Like, go sit down and talk to those people. That's why we're here. Okay? Ashley, Chip, Don, Mika, thank you so much. For everyone else, we will start the pathway roundtables at 1:10. We are so proud of you all for attending and so appreciative of you all for your time. And once again, Don, thanks again for the support of Body Armor. Speaking of relationships, I met Don 5 years ago with a different job, a different profession, under totally different guys. And now he's here today. So thank you again, Don, for the support.
No problem, man. Was that French Quarter wings?
Yeah, French Quarter.
Yeah.
French Quarter Fridays.
Lemon pepper wings. We met on lemon pepper wings, guys.
Thanks all. We'll see you at 1:10 for the Pathway Roundtables. Thanks, team.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.